And it's the British tradition that's a sight to behold. The stage is set for the annual cheese rolling race this bank holiday weekend.
Now, you might not think chasing a wheel of cheese down a very steep hill is a particularly good idea. But this weekend, people from across the world will travel to Gloucestershire to do just that.
So this is a centuries-old tradition, seeing people throwing themselves down the incline. Incline doesn't really do it justice. In a bid to prove they're better than the rest. We need a sound effect for that, really, don't we? And bring the giant double Gloucester home, our reporter Steve Nibbs has more.
A tumbling they go down the 1 in 3 gradient, chasing a 3-kilo cheese for 200 yards before often landing with a bump. The biggest challenge, of course, staying on your feet. Some run and hope for the best. Others roll like the cheese. And when the weather's not so good, there's the option to slide. There's an often talked about moment when defending champion Craig Brown was stretchered off the hill. His body had ended up in positions that it probably hadn't been in before and certainly haven't been in since. Let me take you back to 2002 and watch closely. Craig had started well, but then, as can happen on the hill, it all went a bit wrong. Craig ended up with 22 stitches and plenty of aches and pains.
No regrets?
None at all. It was good fun. We took a lot of people up there with us because when somebody you know is doing something quite crazy, all your friends want to be on board with it. They don't want to do it as such, but they're on board to watch you do it.
The thing about this unforgiving hill is that it doesn't matter how hard you try or what you're wearing, it's so difficult just to stay on your own 2 feet. There are plenty of pitfalls on the way down for the competitors, but there is one thing that seems to elicit the most squeals and oohs from the crowd, and that's the famous cheese-rolling faceplant. But then look out for one of last year's champions, Delaney Irving from Canada, as she flies into shot. There she goes, and faceplants herself into unconsciousness. But don't worry, she was fine.
I remember running and then I hurt my head. And then I woke up in the tent.
The question is, are you going to come back next year and do it again to reclaim your title?
I think I will.
Despite the injuries?
Despite the injuries, I think it's worth it.
Without doubt, the cheese rolling is a sight to behold. A crazy, odd, bewildering, very British tradition. And once more, the stage on Cooper's Hill is set. Oh, the anticipation. Steve Nibbs, BBC News.
Don't quite know what to say. Let's introduce the big cheese himself, the 23-time champion, Chris Anderson. We've got to start with the big question. Why?
It's a local tradition, and we just like to keep it going for the village, to be honest.
And you've landed yourself with all sorts of injuries over the years. Talk us through them.
So I broke my ankle in 2005 when I won my first cheese. And then I bruised my kidneys in 2010. And that's probably the worst injury I've had so far.
And you're not a big cheese fan, are you, or a big double Gloucester fan?
Not a big double Gloucester fan, no. But I always try every one that I win and then give the rest around to family and friends.
Morning to you, Chris. It's Charlie here. I have been to the hill and I know what it's like firsthand. And I don't think maybe you can help us with this. And people who haven't been there, that hill is so steep. Until you can see it on television and you can look at it and think it looks pretty steep. But it is phenomenally steep, isn't it? When you look down, just kind of try and give people a sense of what it's like as you launch down.
So the first 10 metres when you step off is near vertical. Then it sort of levels out a little bit. And then about halfway down, there's a big hole on the left-hand side. But no matter where you step, it's just little, like, pitfalls and trenches. And it's just, well, it's a 1 in 2 gradient. So it's really steep.
And how conscious are you as you, I mean, you go down at pace. Just can you, because you're the best at this. So what is your policy? And while we're talking, we should say, frankly, we're seeing people who don't do it as well as you do, who are landing on their heads, they go face planting. It looks horrendous. How do you manage to stay on your feet and get down?
I just sort of throw myself into it and basically just try and run as far as I can, leaning backwards. And once I've got too much speed up, I just throw myself into a fall. And then I will just get on my feet quicker, usually than everywhere else, and get up and run again.
So you've shared your top 3 tips. Do you want to go through them?
So to start with, you need to run if you want to be in with a chance of winning. If you're going too fast, throw yourself into a sort of army roll if you can. And then the final one is just try and get yourself back on your feet as quick as possible and just sprint in the last sort of 20, 30 metres.
Oh, that's interesting, because we were looking at some of the techniques of people sort of turning to a right angle and then just rolling down, like on their side, hip to hip. But you wouldn't advocate that technique?
Not for myself, I wouldn't. I suppose it throws in more opportunity of getting yourself hurt. But there's people who have rolled from top to bottom and still won it. So,
Chris, my impression from what you're saying is that caution, in a way, is maybe a way that you get more injured. You know, it sounds like you're staying on your feet and hurling yourself down, although it might not seem logical, is more safe. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd say so. You just got to sort of throw yourself into it, and I think when you stiffen yourself up and brace for sort of impacts, that's when you tend to get the injuries. And I think we find most injuries come from people wearing like football boots or rugby boots because the studs dig in. So I'd advise not wearing them.
And you've retired at a point where the current champion is American and the ladies' current champion is from British Columbia, Canadian. Is it not time to claim it back for the Brits? Claim that cheese.
I will be back running at some point. I want to race my boy when he's 18. But I won't be racing this year because I'm going abroad in a couple of weeks. I don't want to risk getting injured. And just knowing my luck, this year will be the year.
You'd let your son do it?
He's already run down it probably 20 or 30 times when he goes up there with his friends like I used to when I was a kid.
Chris, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you so much, and we'll look forward to seeing you as and when you get back on the hill. Thank you very much.
Enjoy your holiday. Gosh.
Do you know, like a lot of people who do extreme things, or, you know, what some people might say quite reckless things, he's very pragmatic about the whole thing, isn't he? Very businesslike.
Yeah. And his son's already up there training for it. Wow.